How does someone call for help and still end up in handcuffs? That's the question this story keeps asking. And by the time you understand the answer, you'll have watched an innocent woman make choices that would have made her guilty of something else entirely. Because that's what happens when the system closes around you. You stop trying to prove your innocence. You start trying to survive. Her name is Ahn Yun-soo, and the night she found her husband dying on the floor of his studio, she did everything right. It didn't matter at all. She's a high school art teacher. Her husband, Lee Ki-dae, is a freelance painter, a respected one, the kind who works late into the night in a private studio filled with canvases, sketches, and the sharp smell of solvents and oil paint. That night they had plans to meet at the studio. She parked below, took the stairs up, and the moment she stepped through the door, something was wrong. The smell hit her first, rubbing alcohol heavy in the air. Then she saw him. She pressed her hands against the wound. She called the police. She stayed with him until they arrived, and the investigators walked in and looked at her like she was the answer to a question they'd already formed. Here's what the investigation builds its case on. No forced entry, no signs of a break-in. A wife who kept rubbing alcohol at school and at home. She mentioned it herself. A wife who'd been pushing her husband to have a second child. And the knife beside the body that, when the forensic team checks, doesn't match the rack it was supposedly taken from. Someone swapped it. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Prosecutor Baek Dong-hun digs into Yun-soo's past, and what he finds doesn't help her. Orphanage records. A note that at 12 years old, she pushed a friend down a flight of stairs. His theory takes shape fast. A violent past, a jealous wife, a confrontation that went too far. A woman who knew the studio well enough to clean a scene. He's wrong, but he's certain. And certainty in a prosecutor is a very specific kind of dangerous. There's one detail nobody knows what to do with. Yun-soo says she saw someone leaving the studio that night, a figure in a black hoodie, running. She helped create a sketch. The police found no third party. They filed it away. Remember that detail. It will come back in the story, under the weight of everything. The media, the interrogations, the separation from her daughter, the sustained institutional pressure that wears a person down, not with force but with exhaustion. Yun-soo briefly confesses. Then she takes it back in court. She says, "If I confess, I become my daughter's father's murderer in her eyes. I can't do that. If I didn't kill him, how can I say that I did?" The court schedules another hearing, and across the city, something else is happening. A married dentist couple is found poisoned in their own home. The woman who did it didn't run. She was still there when the police arrived, watching them work the scene with the patience of someone who has nowhere else to be. When they question her, she says she worked as their dental assistant. She says it like she's describing traffic. When a reporter pushes further and asks about the couple's son, she turns to the camera and says, "Your parents weren't good people. The fault lies with being born into the wrong family. So you have to pay the price too." The press gives her a name, the Witch. Her real name is Mo-eun, and she gets placed in the same detention facility as Yun-soo. That was not a coincidence, though it will take the whole series to understand why. Prison is already dismantling Yun-soo piece by piece. She learns her daughter knows about the charges. The thought breaks something in her. When another inmate pushes her, she slams her own head against the wall, not out of anger, but out of the specific despair of someone who has run completely out of room. She's moved to the medical ward, then solitary confinement. Mo-eun enters the general population and within hours establishes exactly who she is. An inmate mocks her. Mo-eun picks up a chopstick, snaps it cleanly in half, and holds the broken end against the woman's neck. "This is your artery, the most important and weakest part of the human body. Just a 1 mm cut and your blood will be everywhere. The medical ward here won't save you. You'll die from blood loss on the way to the hospital." She ends up in solitary confinement, which is exactly where she intended to go. Because here's what Mo-eun actually did. She faked severe arachnophobia, screaming, refusing to stay in her cell, performing panic so convincingly that the guards moved her into the solitary cell directly adjacent to Yun-soo's. She had planned this before she walked through the front door. Through the crack between the cells, she calls out to Yun-soo quietly. She recites things back to her. Things Yun-soo said to the media, details only someone who'd been paying very close attention would have held on to. And then she makes her offer. She'll confess to killing Ki-dae. In court, on record, with enough detail to collapse the prosecution's case. In return, once Yun-soo is released, she'll kill someone. The target is Ko Se-hoon, the teenage son of the dentist couple. He's living under his grandfather's supervision, a retired colonel named Ko Dong-uk. Yoon-soo doesn't say yes. She doesn't say no. Mo-yoon already knows what that means. Mo-eun requests a jury trial. And then in open court, she announces she is confessing to a second murder. Ki dies. The room doesn't know how to process this. Baek feels the ground shift under everything he's built. He pushes back. Investigators press Mo-eun on details, things that were never released to the press. The layout of Ki-dae's studio, the specific knife, the rubbing alcohol, the second car parked below that night. She recites all of it. From memory. Months after the murder. Perfectly accurate. She draws the studio floor plan without hesitation. How does she know? He runs a polygraph. Baseline questions first. Name, ID number, simple answers. Then he leans in and grabs the microphone and asks directly, "What was your motive for killing Ki-dae?" Mo-eun laughs. Just a short laugh. The readings stay flat. Baek's intervention has just contaminated his own test. The polygraph is unusable. Then Mo-eun turns and looks directly into the live broadcast camera. Her lips move. No sound. In the observation room, Yoon-soo is watching the screen, and she reads it, a message, delivered in silence, in front of a full courtroom and a live national broadcast. The deal is still running. Don't get comfortable. Think about what Mo-eun just did. She confessed to a murder she didn't commit, in public, under oath, and she threatened the woman she's protecting in the same breath without moving a single muscle anyone else could read. At this point, whose side are you on? And does the answer to that question make you uncomfortable? The public doesn't ask those questions. The public sees a prosecution that has been chasing the wrong woman for months and a system that almost destroyed an innocent person. Baek's credibility collapses in real time. He submits a resignation letter. His superiors reject it and keep him on the case. He burns with it. He doesn't stop believing Yoon-soo is guilty, but belief and evidence are different things, and right now the evidence is moving. Yoon-soo's lawyer, Jang Jong-gu, a former boxer turned defense attorney, loud and relentless and genuinely committed to the truth, works every connection he has. Media, live coverage. He pushes until the story shifts. It works. The day Yoon-soo is released, she can't hear anything. The noise, the cameras, the shouting, it all goes white. Jung-gu gets her into a car. When she finally holds her daughter, after all that time, her eyes fill without warning. The warmth lasts about 30 seconds because the deal is still running in the back of her mind, underneath everything, constant. Once you're out, you have to kill that boy. Probation officer Bae Sun-duk arrives to fit the electronic monitor. She's direct about it. Yoon-soo is free, but she isn't free. Home, office, her daughter's school. Nothing else. The moment the control center gets an alert, she's held responsible. There's no gray area. Yoon-soo nods. She's traded one kind of cage for another, and they both know it. Back in solitary confinement, Mo-eun gets a guard to bring her sleeping pills. She says she can't sleep. The guard hesitates, decides she seems harmless, and brings them. The moment he leaves, Mo-eun spits the pills out from under her tongue and hides them carefully. She's collecting something. No one knows what yet. Then a law professor arrives at the prison to see her. His name is Jin Yong-in. He's well known, published, respected, the kind of defense attorney who takes impossible cases and wins them. He tells Mo-eun he doesn't believe she killed Ki-dae. He offers to represent her for free. Mo-eun lowers her guard slightly. She writes a letter. Asks him to deliver it to Yoon-soo. The letter contains nothing, just pleasantries. But Yoon-soo feels the weight of it like a hand closing around her throat. The deal has an expiration date. If she doesn't fulfill it before her appeal, Mo-eun retracts the confession and Yoon-soo goes back inside for the rest of her life. What would you do with weeks like that? She starts watching Ko Se-hoon. She learns his schedule, school, tutoring center, his home. From a distance, he looks like any other teenager, a little careless, playing video games with a strict 1-hour limit set by his grandfather. Quiet, young. But at the tutoring center one afternoon, she sees something else. A man waiting for Se-hoon, cash in an envelope, a transaction that doesn't fit the picture she's been building. She gets into the probation office computer a few seconds while the officer is out of the room and photographs Se-hoon's juvenile record. That night, she digs deeper. He was convicted of distributing obscene videos. The case was closed quickly. Family money, family connections, and there's a note beneath the ruling. He was there the day his parents were murdered, not a victim, a variable. She goes to Kda's studio. She doesn't know exactly what she's looking for. She moves through the space the way you move through a room that used to mean something different, slowly, touching things, trying to read what's still there. She looks at the painting he was working on the night he died. She can still see her own handprints on the edge of it. She doesn't see the other one yet, but she will. Meanwhile, Baek is still pulling at every thread he has. He interrogates Mo-eun again, pushes at Jin Young-in, demands to know what was in the letter. Jin tells him lawyer-client privilege applies. He's right. Baek watches him walk away and sits with the specific feeling of knowing something is wrong and having no legal way to reach it. She almost does it. Standing in that elevator with the doors closing and her hand on the weapon in her bag, the plan is right there. She's thought through every step. She knows his routines. She has a reason. Her daughter, her freedom, the deal that expires in days. She takes her hand out of her bag. She lets him walk away. She can't. So she breaks her ankle monitor, calls in a false report, and goes to his house. She rings the bell pretending to be a gas inspector. He lets her in. She approaches him from behind while he plays video games, but he turns, recognizes her from the elevator, and they fight. She chokes him until he loses consciousness. She raises the knife. She can't do it, so she changes tactics. She wakes him up. She tells him the truth. Someone wants him dead. She was supposed to be the one to do it. She's not going to, but if he doesn't disappear, someone else will come. They stage a photograph together. Se-hun posed to look dead. She sends it to Mo-eun as proof the job is done. Mo-eun rejects it. She'd already received a different photograph through her lawyer showing Se-hun actually dead. She knew. She always knew. Yoon-soo is shaken to her core because if Mo-eun has that photo, someone else got to Se-hun. Someone who wanted him dead and her blamed for it. Days later, Ko Se-hun is officially found in the villa, stuffed into a freezer. Yoon-soo didn't kill him. She has webcam footage from the house that proves she left while he was still breathing. But the forensic evidence, strands of her hair near the bloodstains, her movements tracked by the ankle monitor, points right at her. She's back in the trap. Everything she did to get out has looped into a tighter version of the same cage. Here's what neither she nor Baek knows yet. Jin Young-in killed Se-hun, Mo-eun's own lawyer. He'd been monitoring every communication between the two women using his legal access to Mo-eun's case. When he found out Se-hun was still alive, he drove to the villa and finished the job himself. Then he made sure the forensic evidence pointed at Yoon-soo. He needed her to look guilty. The question is why? And the answer to that goes back further than any of this. Baek starts to fracture. He's built his professional identity around being right about Yoon-soo. But the irregularities keep surfacing. Surveillance that wasn't authorized, connections between parties that shouldn't exist, a case that has been operating on assumptions he can no longer fully trust. And then the surveillance itself is exposed. Jin Young-in and his wife, Choi Soo-yeon, had been intercepting every message between Mo-eun and Yoon-soo from the start, not through hacking. Through Jin's legal access as Mo-eun's attorney, he used the privilege meant to protect his client to monitor her instead. He knew when Yoon-soo went to warn Se-hun. He knew about the staged photograph. He knew all of it before anyone else did. Which means he's been engineering every move in this case from inside it. And the reason he needed Yoon-soo to stay guilty brings us back to Kda's studio. Here's what actually happened. Jin Young-in and his wife Soo-yeon, a celebrated cellist whose career was quietly falling apart, donated a painting to a university where Kda was connected. They presented it as Soo-yeon's work. At the gala, the university director asks Kda his opinion of the piece, and Kda, with the specific bluntness of someone who has spent years knowing the difference between real work and stolen work, says, "The artist plagiarized an apprentice's design." The director's opinion of Jin shifts in the room, visibly. But here's what Kda didn't know, and what Yoon-soo will eventually piece together. The painting wasn't plagiarized from some apprentice. It was Kda's own work, his original design. Years earlier, Jin Young-in had quietly taken it and given it to his wife to pass off as her own, to prop up a career that was failing. Kda had let it go, until the donation, until he saw his own work hanging in a university hall under another name. He didn't accuse Jin publicly. He just told the director the truth in private, that the artist had stolen from someone else. Jin spends weeks trying to contact Kda. He wants an apology, a retraction. Kda doesn't respond. He doesn't return the calls. He's not interested in protecting Jin Yongin's reputation anymore. So one evening, Jin and Soo-yeon go to the studio themselves. Ki-dae refuses again. And Soo-yeon, a woman whose entire artistic identity is built on work that was, in this conversation, being described as fraudulent by the man who actually painted it, snaps completely. She smashes a wine bottle across Ki-dae's head. Then she picks up one of his own knives from the rack and stabs him in the neck. Jin tells her to leave. He stays behind. He pours solvent across every surface. He switches the knives, replacing the murder weapon with a clean one, returning the original to the rack. He stages the scene with the methodical care of a man who has spent his career understanding exactly how crime scenes are read. He's still there, hidden, when Yoon-soo arrives, finds Ki-dae on the floor, and calls the police. The figure Yoon-soo saw running away that night, the person in the black hoodie the police filed away as nothing, that was Soo-yeon. Beck exposes it. Mo-eun is not who she said she was. And honestly, that's exactly where this recap ends. Not because I ran out of story, but because what So-hye did next, why she did it, and how it ends is the kind of reveal you need to watch yourself. So drop your theories in the comments. Who do you think Mo-eun really is? Why did she choose Yoon-soo of all people? And if you had to guess, is she a villain who used an innocent woman, or someone the system failed so badly she had no other choice? Then watch The Price of Confession and come back. I want to know if your guess was right. If you love dramas with real depth and storytelling, this channel is made for you. Subscribe so you don't miss the next recap and drop your suggestions in the comments.